You gotta check out this concept for the PS5 Pro. The PS4 is an update, the PS5 is an update, and we have the December PS Plus games. Let's jump into the PlayStation news. And before we do, make sure you're subscribed and have your notifications set to all. You know what they say about PS Plus, it's always better late than never. When the games don't leak an entire month early, we usually don't hear about them till well into the month that they're supposed to be available. And keeping with the trend, we have the PS Plus games for December, which are all available on December 7th. Every time I say it's a good month for PS Plus, the next day I see an article that's like, oh, it's actually the worst month ever. And I'm like, how? And then I read it and I'm like, all right, that's a pretty good justification for it being a not great PS Plus month. This one, I'm gonna go ahead and classify as mid. So I saw initially that it looks like you've got Godfall coming, the full game. It's a PS5 launch title, and I know it's not the best, but it got updated a lot over the past year and it's gone on sale a ton. I see people always talking about giving it a chance at least. So it was like, oh, cool. We're getting a PS5 launch title on PS Plus. And then I read into it and it's the Challengers Edition. So what this is a $15 edition of Godfall that basically lets you skip the entire grind and the entire story and just make an endgame character. So if you want to just jump into the like meat of the game, all the endgame stuff, the raids and dungeons, if they even have that, this is the edition of the game that they're giving away. Honestly, not sure why they're giving away this edition on PS Plus. This should just be free. I don't know why they're charging $15 for it, because if you like it and you want to play the Godfall story, you can just upgrade to the deluxe edition and then play through the entire thing. So it's like a glorified demo that you're paying for access to. And I guess it is giving you the end game, which is nice, so you don't have to skip the grind, but that doesn't really show a lot of confidence in everything that comes before the end game. I don't know, it's weird. They've done a lot with this game, they've patched it, they've expanded it. It's a weird launch title and it's the most bizarre one I've seen, because usually when like a new console comes out, every launch title at least gets a fair shake and they get a review score bump, because it's like, oh, this is the latest and greatest next gen thing, and then a few years later you're like, yeah, maybe Killzone Shadowfall didn't deserve a 9.5 out of 10. You know what I mean? Anyway, if you've been looking for a multiplayer game to play with your friends because all your other friends are playing Halo on Xbox, maybe check out this Challengers Edition of Godfall. If you just got opening night tickets to Spider-Man No Way Home and you need something to wear, check out the merch shelf below this video, because we've got my DualSense is Tingling design right here, now coming in blue. We used to have black, now we have black and blue. Honestly, I think you can put it on any color you want. I probably wouldn't put it on red though, because it might just blend into the shirt. We've reached the point of the PS4's life cycle where it's just gonna get stability updates forever because someone found a hack and Sony wants to get ahead of it. And that's exactly what we have with update 9.03, which was just released on the PS4. Now, Sony started doing this weird thing with PS4 updates last generation where some of them were mandatory and some of them were not. And usually when you see these stability and security ones, they aren't mandatory, but this is a mandatory one. So if you're still on the PS4 and you wanna be able to use the PSN or go on the store and buy games, you're gonna have to download this 490 megabyte update. Even though the PS4 is still selling pretty well because people can't find PS5s and they want games to play, I don't think we're gonna see any major features added to the machine. And if Sony is gonna follow the track that they usually follow, I would honestly expect features to start being shut down on the PS4. So if you want to have like a PS4 swan song night, you're gonna have to download this update. Just make sure your PS4 is plugged in rest mode and you have auto updates on, and you won't even have to think about it. That's so annoying though, when you like are on a PS5 and then you have it in rest mode because you're playing a run of Returnal and you forgot to do the quick save or something like that, and then it auto updates and then you have to start all over. The same thing happened to me in Deathloop. I hate it. It's so annoying. Speaking of updates to improve security and performance, the PS5 was not left out this time either, and I gotta read this version off my phone here, because unlike the PS4, which is just a nice little 9.03, this is version 21.02-04.50.00. That's ready to be downloaded now onto your PS5, and again, if you have updates on automatically, it will have already done it, so hopefully you weren't playing one of the weirdly many roguelites that came out this year as PS5 exclusives, because you're gonna have to start a run over. I just mentioned this, but Returnal, I think it's a lot worse having to start over than Deathloop. I'm at the end of Deathloop right now. I played it over the Thanksgiving break, and honestly, at the beginning I was like, all right, is this really game of the year? I don't really know why people are giving it so many 10 out of 10s. Now that I have a bunch of weapons though, I'm like, oh yeah, this game is awesome. The story is like a typical Arcane thing. You gotta read computers, pick up notes and all that stuff to figure out what's going on. But the cool thing is that it plays into like the way that Deathloop works. So if you read a note on a table, not only is it gonna give you a little bit of the story, but but it might let you know where one of the visionaries you have to kill is going to be at that time of day. And also the weapons in this game are all pretty good. There's multiple shotguns, you've got like silenced weapons, and it has a weird sort of looter shooter aspect to it that's really clicking with me. Like the main SMG that you start with, it's called the Limp 10, and there's a really good one you can get that has exploding bullets, but then I ended up finding one that has silenced bullets, which is so great because the only other silenced gun I was able to find is this nail gun that's always silenced, and it has its own perk pool on top of that. But the way to shoot it is you have to like hold and then charge it up, and you have to get a headshot or else it'll take like 9 shots to like kill someone. Is not an efficient weapon. So now that I have the silenced Limp 10, it's great. And they also have 4 legendary weapons that all have their own sort of mission attached to them. My favorite being the Heritage Shotgun. This thing can be a lever action gun, or you hit the button that it's equipped to on your keyboard, because I'm playing it on PC, sorry guys, and it'll turn into a regular shotgun. And I found one where if you shoot the like slug, it makes a gas cloud, and then if you switch to like buckshot and shoot the gas cloud, it blows up. It's just so cool. You can find all these randomized guns, and it's a great game. So if you haven't played Deathloop, it's been on sale for like 25 bucks this entire month. I highly recommend checking it out. But the fact that Sony is doing one of these performance updates is really interesting to me, because a lot of people have been speculating that we are going to see a major PS5 update by the end of the year. We have stuff like the Game Awards coming up next week. There's a lot of rumblings that PlayStation is going to do something. And if they are going to update the PlayStation 5, they only have a few more things to do. Variable refresh rate, 1440p support, folders, and themes. If they can pack all of that into one big end of the year firmware update, they'll get a little bit of press back from Microsoft's like victory lap they're having right now, even though the Battle Pass system in Halo Infinite is probably the worst thing in any looter shooter I've ever played. And if you guys don't know, that's like my bread and butter type of game. But yeah, I don't think a firmware update is something that they would announce at the Game Awards specifically, but Sony does like to show stuff off at Jeff Keighley's events. We've gotten things announced like Lost Judgment, stuff like Death Stranding's director's cut. So yeah, I feel like since they haven't been in the news all that much lately, we're gonna at least either see something at the Game Awards or get a big firmware update by the end of the year. And honestly, I'm fine with either. So yeah, the Game Awards are December 9th. I'll definitely be watching with my Mountain Dew and Doritos in hand, ready to see some game announcements, because you know all of them are gonna be on PS5. So yeah, long story short, if you wanna use the PSN, make sure you download this update for your PS5. So while Halo Infinite is far ahead of the pack this year in terms of first-person shooters, Battlefield 2042 I think is probably the most disappointing one for a lot of people. I know when it was initially announced, you had DICE coming out and saying this one's for the fans. We really looked at Battlefield 5 and then tried to bring Battlefield back to what people wanted, and then it turned out that the main modes in Battlefield 2042 are pretty much the opposite of what people wanted, and then the stuff that Vince Zampella and his new team made for Battlefield Portal mode are basically exactly what people wanted. And since Battlefield has come out, there's been weird bugs. There's this thing called Bloom, where when you hold down firing on this like automatic weapon, it like spreads the bullets out, but it does it way too aggressively in Battlefield. So you could just like have your red dot sights trained on someone, like right on their head, and you could hold the trigger for like 45 seconds and not get a single hit. They fixed stuff like that. There were a ton of other bugs though, like where you saw hovercrafts driving up buildings. They said that they fixed all that too, but there's the biggest issue, which is the whole operator thing. They basically just took that from Warzone or Apex Legends, where you have distinct characters you play as, and it makes it very hard to know what team you're playing on. Like in Battlefield 4, you had the US and Russia, right? Those were the two options. Or in Battlefield 2, you had Axis and Allies. You know who's on the opposite team. But when you only have a select few players you can pick from, and they're the same on both teams, it's kind of hard to know who's on what team. And I don't know, I like the idea of having these powers that these characters can use. I think that's kind of cool, I guess, but having it so there's no classes, like everyone can be a medic, I don't like stuff like that, because what separates Battlefield from something like Warzone at that point? I know it's not a battle royale, but it's just a big open map where you're playing as an operator who has their own ability. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Obviously, people kind of caught on to the fact that the reason they're having operators is because you can make specific skins for those operators and sell them in a store or add them to a battle pass, and we actually had some leaks of a holiday event that's going to have its own skins, and people are not happy about the fact that one of the operators can be turned into Santa Claus. Now at first I was like, that's kind of cool, I guess. Like, I don't know why people are mad, but then I thought about it and it's like, yeah, if I want to play Call of Duty or Warzone or anything like that, I can go play Warzone and get killed by Jigsaw in the middle of Russia, you know? Like, that's there. I don't need Battlefield, the game that's supposed to be the big budget military sim type experience, to have Santa Claus running around and stabbing me in the back of the neck. Battlefield's in a weird spot right now. I just saw that the general manager of DICE actually left, and Vince Zampella, the guy who made Respawn Entertainment, was actually promoted to be the leader of Battlefront. I just said Battlefront because I was thinking of Battlefront 2 that DICE made, and it's like awesome now. I play it all the time. But yeah, I think it's both good and bad because Vince Zampella, he's like obviously a great dude to have lead your studio because he came out with stuff like Titanfall 2 and Jedi Fallen Order, and of course Apex Legends came out of Respawn. But taking him off the table to work on Battlefield when he's obviously more suited to stuff like Titanfall, well, it seems like the smartest idea right now. I wish they could find someone who knows about Battlefield games so that he's not taken up, right? Because I want this dude working on Jedi Fallen Order 2 or maybe even Titanfall 3. You know what I mean? I don't know. Battlefield 2042 is in a weird state, and honestly, it reminds me of Battlefield 4. When I got my PlayStation 4, Battlefield 4 was like the big game because it had Levolution, where buildings would fall over during like gameplay and stuff like that, and it didn't really work when the game came out, but then 6 months later, like June or July, it worked just fine, and the game was actually pretty good. So hopefully around that time next year, we're looking back and Battlefield 2042 is fixed. So since PlayStation hasn't really been in the news all that much lately, we've been seeing a lot of concepts for PS5 Pros coming out on all the big websites, and one of them really caught my eye because it kind of looks like a bizarre prototype of the original PS5 instead of being like a PS5 Pro. It's just like a smoothed out PS5 that doesn't have the fins, but it retains that design that we kind of already know with the original PS5. I think it's kind of cool. I just don't necessarily think it looks like something that would come out of Sony. You know, they have a little bit of weirdness that this thing just, it's a little too smooth. I think that's what I'm trying to say here. But it got me thinking of like the timeline and what I would want in a PS5 Pro. Obviously, the first thing I really want is a size reduction. So in my PS5 1 year later video, I showed a picture of my TV stand and how the PS5 will only fit horizontally in there. But I cleaned out my office and I was like, I would really like to have my PS5 in here because I just got an OLED. So I put it in sideways, looked really weird. And I was like, what if I take off the stand and I tilted it up and it just caught a little bit at the top and I pushed it. So now it is like permanently stuck in my TV stand vertically. There's literally like a millimeter of clearance. So yeah, if they could figure out how to make the PS5 Pro smaller, I won't feel so bad when I gotta take a plier and snap off the top of my black plates that I have on my PS5, because there is no way I'm getting that thing out of there at this point. Another feature I would really want to see is bigger onboard storage. Now it makes sense that they had a smaller SSD out the gate because those things are expensive. So if you include a much bigger SSD, it's going to bring up the price of the console. And they're already pretty much breaking even on the PS5 with that $500 price point. And I'm pretty sure they're going to end up losing money on the digital editions, even though they say sometimes it's profitable, sometimes it isn't. That's obviously coming down to shipping costs. But by the time we're going to get a PS5 Pro, which should be by like the next 2 years, I would assume that a lot of the parts that are inside the PS5 are going to come down in price, or at least I would hope. And that'll allow them to include better parts like a bigger SSD, so that when they release the PS5 Pro, they can keep it around the same price point as the launch PS5. And then hopefully they also have a PS5 Slim that costs $400 and maybe even $350 for a discless edition. Or maybe they'll do the crazy thing and make it so that the PS5 Slim is discless and the PS5 Pro is the one with the disc drive, just like Xbox does with the Series X and S. I would also just really like to see Sony's answer to the Elite controller. I know the Elite controller V2 has some issues, like parts don't necessarily always fit, the battery will die internally, the rubber grips come off, but as a concept, a controller concept that they've created, it's something that people really like. So I would like to see Sony take on Microsoft in that way with an official DualSense Pro model. You could increase the battery, you could have the paddles like we got on the DualShock 4. I don't know, there's a ton of different things you could do there. I would just like to see Sony at least try it. And honestly, it would just be really cool to get native 4K as a baseline. I know 1080p is like the performance mode resolution for a lot of games. 1440p is what you also see in a lot of different games. But if they could get like a 60 frames per second 4K native, at least on Sony first party games, that would probably encourage a lot of different developers to get their technical standards up and stop releasing games that have performance modes and quality modes that run like crap. Guardians of the Galaxy, it's very up there. It's probably my second game of the year. I'll let you know after I beat complete Deathloop, but the fact that that game's two options are 4K 30 and 1080p kinda 60, that's a joke. They need to figure that out. That game should have came out a little bit later just so they could figure out those technical issues. 1080p in 2021, we've got a 1080p game that's single player. What happened there? I already mentioned bigger built-in storage, but it would also be easier if they figured out a way to make it just a little bit easier to install an SSD. Now I've done it for a few videos at this point and it is a pretty easy process. I just can see that if I had never done it before and I wasn't someone who has built a PC, it might look a little scary. So if they could figure out how to do it like they had with the PS3 or at least something similar where all they had was like a plastic little door that you flipped off and then you could just unscrew the hard drive and pop in a new one, that would be sweet. I know with the NVMe drives, there's a different port and I don't know if it would work the same if they had a little slot like that where you just slide it in. Xbox has it figured out though with their little SSD expansion, so if we can figure out something along the lines of that, it would be cool. Obviously, I don't want it to be proprietary like with the Xbox because man, those things are expensive. I saw they put out a 2 terabyte one that's $400. That's almost as much as the console itself. You go to the store and buy an Xbox Series X and one of these things, you're walking out having spent $1,000 with tax, at least here in California. That is nuts. It's giving me flashbacks to the Vita days when a 16 gigabyte memory card costs over $40 because they didn't want to use micro SSDs because people hacked the PSP. That's what killed the Vita, Sony. That's what killed the Vita. This last one I'm kind of torn on because we just saw that Sony patented removable plates for the PS5, which made people think we're gonna get customizable ones, which is cool. Like we could get a Horizon Forbidden West set of plates, that'd be sweet. But I would want those to be future proof so I could use them on at least a PS5 Slim or PS5 Pro. But then I thought about it for a second. I was like, I don't know if I want the PS5 Pro to stay the same size as the PS5 that I have now. But if they're going to pack in a lot more features, as long as they don't make it bigger, I guess that's what I'm going for. But yeah, if they are gonna keep it the same size, it'd be cool if we could keep those plates that are going to be customizable and use them on a PS5 Pro. At the very least, whenever we get the Pro and the Slim, they gotta start coming out with some special edition consoles. My buddy Ray over on PSReady unboxed the Xbox Series X that's a Halo Infinite edition. That thing is awesome. I know Xbox can't figure out how to get the Series X on shelves and that one was even harder to find, but I saw one in real life and I was like, man, I would love to see Sony's answer to this. So that would be awesome to see. But yeah, that's all I got for features I want from a PS5 Pro. I would guess we're gonna see it in the next couple years. So if you have any ideas for features they could add, let me know down in the comments. Anyway guys, that's all the PlayStation news I have for today. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.